very warm welcome back to all of you. Today we will be looking at the fascinating subject of women and leadership. For those of you who are watching, this subject may hold personal interest for you. You may be a young woman who's interested in attaining a position of power and governance one day. You may be in your 20s or 30s, already high up in the corporate ladder, about to become management or something equivalent, or you could be a woman in her prime, in her late 40s and 50s, who has attained the status of leadership. Whatever your position is, leadership is a subject of fascination to women, simply because it is a aspect that has not been always available to women all across the globe. A woman can be a leader within her own domestic environment, as well as a work environment, as well as her social circle. So we want to know what leadership is towards a woman, and how does she manage leadership? That is the question that we will be looking at today. So Sister Denise, I bid you a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
Sister Denis, you have been surrounded by women and leadership for most of your, shall I say, adult life and spiritual life. What does leadership mean to you?
To me, leadership means people follow you.
Okay. And how does spirituality fit into that picture?
Well, you are a mentor, you are an example, your style of things is emulated and copied by other people, your opinion is listened to, whatever you do, people tend to do likewise. You're very much in command of your environment, you are a thinker, maybe an independent thinker, and you move ahead and open up the way for others. So you may or may not be in a position of leadership, but if you're doing those things or that is happening around you, you're a leader.
Now, within the Brahma kumaris, you would have seen some prime examples of female leadership, haven't you?
Well, the one that I particularly go with is Dadi Prakashmani. She was brilliant.
In what way?
Dadi Prakashmani was actually her name was also Kumarka. Kumarka meaning the girl who's a boy. So she had a lot of her masculine qualities, but she was never away from her femininity. Physically, she was absolutely beautiful, very regal, very commanding, an absolute leader in every way you can think of, but her style, I think, was particularly interesting because it was what I call consultative leadership. So she would always call the people in any decision-making process who were concerned, and she would listen to them, she would form her judgment, she would consult with them about her judgment and refine it until everybody was satisfied. And then she would move forward. Once she would make a decree with everybody's consent and willing agreement, then whatever she said was just done immediately. So she was really an emperor in a lot of ways. She never, under any circumstances, would ever abuse power. Because the thing is, people are quite willing to accord power to someone who seems to step into that position. And when people give you power, or give their power over to you, it's a big temptation to abuse it. So a good leader is very disciplined inside. And there is a saying in Brahma kumaris, is one who knows how to follow, knows how to lead.
The unfortunate reality of living in this century is that although we may have historical examples of good leadership, there are women across the globe who would want to be leaders, but there's no precedent set for them as to how to be. It's not just a question of action, isn't it? It's how to be. What would be your message to such a person who is very much aware of her inner power, and wants it to be expressed in a positive and humanitarian way, but finds it difficult because there's no one who has walked that path before her.
Well, then she's not a leader, because I think a leader is a path maker.
Really?
You see, so I don't think a leader is somebody who wants to be a leader. That's a follower. You know, a leader just leads without even thinking about whether or not they're a leader, you know. Because a leader is somebody that people follow. A leader is somebody who thinks on her feet right away, someone who thinks out of the box. A leader is someone who has vision, who is inspired, who is very courageous, who is not put down or concerned about obstacles, obstructions, difficulties, or whatever. She will find a way around it and take everybody along that way. But a leader has to be very disciplined, and I think also dedicated. Mm. And in the spiritual practice that I am involved in, Raj Yoga, one of the things that is very much an advantage for us is that we have chosen to dedicate our life to spiritual service. You see, because a leader is a server. A leader serves the people.
Oh, that is beautiful. Not many see it that way. But hold on, finish your sentence, Sister Denise. I'd like to revisit this further.
You see, when you serve a country or you serve a community, that community is benefited. And when a community is benefited, they want to go where you're taking them because they feel benefited. So that benefit is the service that the leader does to that community. So the you can say, I think there's an expression, the servant leader.
What does that mean?
In politics, they usually say, you know, so-and-so person served as prime minister. You know, you serve. You serve the community, you serve the people, you serve the country. You are concerned to, you know, fulfill the interests of those that you lead. You see, so leading and serving is
synonymous?
No, not synonymous, but they go together. They're the two sides of the coin, you know. Mm. So if you are a leader who is destructive to those you are supposed to be serving, then that's a tyrant, you know. And if you are a wishy-washy leader, God forbid, but you know, you're hopeless, and then there'll be all kinds of other people who will get in the way and you have a terrible chaos. So a leader has to be strong, focused, dedicated, and in a way unidirectional, but absolutely open to listen.
Yes, so Denise, the qualities that you mentioned earlier on in today's episode, they sounded really quite lovely, but I think we need to focus more on that, because very few of us have actually sat down and articulated what are the qualities of a good leader, a powerful leader, a precedent setter. And I would like you to take us through this, because it's something that far too few of us have actually applied our minds to.
Well, for example, what does the leader say? The leader has to articulate the ideas and feelings and aspirations of those who she is leading, or he. And so you have to have an ear to the ground so that you know what people want, and that you know, you really are there to serve the interests of the wider world, so that you're not doing it for your own. Like, self-serving leadership is not leadership, not good leadership.
There are far too few on the planet who actually know that. Self-serving leadership is not leadership. So you are in it for others.
You're in it for others, but you're not under the influence of others.
Okay, Sister Denise, I want to interject there. The expression from the bard, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We are all familiar with that, okay, whether we've read Shakespeare or not. Now, with being a leader, with being somebody in management, somebody with a title, somebody with, you know, the office, the car, the yada, 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 the stuff, the trappings of success, as it were. With that, your ego says, hey, I have arrived. So
yeah, but
how
that's
do
ego,
you,
isn't it?
Yeah, but then, yeah, my question is, we all face that. How do you manage your ego that it doesn't take over your life?
You know, there's a story connected with Dadi Prakashmani, which may be relevant to share here. Someone asked her, how do you become Bara? Bara, there's a word play on this. Bara means an important person, a leader. And she said, well, Bara is a word play for bara, which is a particular thing that you can eat. And so she said, well, first of all, you bake in the sun, and then they cut you down, they smash you, and they put you in cold water, mix you up, and then they drop you in boiling oil, and then they drop you in yogurt, and then put a bit of chili on top, and you're ready to eat. So what that means is that on the road to becoming a leader, you have to be able to handle extreme humiliation, put down, being cut down, being wiped out, wiped off, whatever it is. So in a way you have to be able to survive all these things because of what you are saying. Power corrupts, but if you have reached a stage of perfect humility before all of the, you know, the weight and the opportunities of power come to you, then even if you have absolute power, you will always keep God over you. And you will never forget that, you know. So the person who achieves that and who's willing to go through all of those situations to get there, they can be a good leader. Because you really do need to learn how to wield power. And you have to have a lot of experience. Because once you get big power, the temptation to abuse it is very strong. And so your personal discipline has to be far stronger than that temptation. So of course it's a very rare person who can be a leader like that, but that's the leaders that we're looking for.
The women of the future.
The
leaders
women of the future.
Leaders of the future. Okay. Okay, Sister Denise, you mentioned the downside of using, or shall I say, abusing your power of leadership, your position of leadership. How does the law of karma come into play when it comes to abuse of power if you're in a position of leadership? I think that is something that we should know.
In a position or not in a position, but if you have power in your hands, you have power over somebody's life, you know. And sometimes you ask me, what's the role of God in this? And I think this is a perfect time to ask that, because my understanding is that God will put power in your hands and check and see and grade you how you handle it. And if you don't handle it well, you pay. If you handle it well, okay, go up to the next level.
Okay. God grades you?
God grades you, absolutely, yes.
So that means life is a school.
Life is a school.
Okay, most of us think we left school, but well, that's interesting
Never
news.
leave school. You know, it's so good, especially for a leader. If you're a leader and you just know that I will never stop learning, because every situation, every opportunity that happens, every failure, every difficulty, every challenge is a lesson. And we have to keep looking for what is the lesson here, because every time you learn a lesson, you make yourself just a little bit more complete, a little bit more better. Even if you are the most powerful person in the world, there's still lessons to learn, you see. And how you use your power is definitely constantly being graded by God. And of course you asked about karma as well. So if you have absolute power in your hands and you're just a person, which we are, just people, you know, sometimes what I do, what happens to me, and it does happen to me, somebody will look at me as if I'm something extraordinary, and I will kind of bring them down to that we're on the same level and say, you know, we're just people here, so don't do that. Bear in mind who you are and that we're just people. And of course, yes, I have power, but it doesn't mean you have to sort of over-revere it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's quite an important message, because a leader has to be accessible and a leader is accountable.
To whom?
Well, you're accountable to those whom you serve. So if you're the leader of a country, you're accountable to the people of that country. If you're a leader of an organization, you're accountable to the people in the organization, and you're also accountable to God. So this inner feeling of expecting to be held accountable, I think, is a very good safety mechanism that a leader needs to have.
That is very, very profound. Sister Denis, a certain measure of introspection is required for a powerful or effective leader, isn't it? I think that's the mistake we make. And I'm referring to the good and successful female women leaders out there. We do what we have to do, but we do not take the time to do a post-mortem of any given day or any given week and ask ourselves, in which way should I do this in future? In which way did I err? How can I improve?
No, that's very, very important. And I think if somebody is in a leadership position or discovers their leader, whatever, you have to have solitary time. And that's very important. Quiet, alone time, maybe in the middle of the night, whatever it is, because you need that to get free from all of the stuff that goes on in the day. Evaluating the day, very, very important, part of your personal discipline. Post-mortem, what was done, checking the consequences of your decisions, you see, because you make a decision, it affects lots of people's lives, and you're responsible for the consequences of your actions on other people. So a leader has to be a person who has great love for God and great love for humanity. So the humanitarian characteristic of a leader, I think, is very, very important too, because you are a server.
That has a very lovely note to it, the humanitarian aspect. Okay, Sister Denis, you touched on ambition earlier, and we touched on it on another episode, but I'd like to bring it in here as well. How does ambition fit into the picture? And that's the first aspect I'd like for you to take up. The second aspect is we all have our own agenda for wanting leadership, for wanting to be in a position of power and authority. There's certain types of agenda that serves you and other types of agenda that works against you, doesn't it?
Well, I think that if you desire to be in a position of authority, why do you desire that? Because it's not an end in itself. And if it is an end in itself, there's something wrong with your ambition, because it's self-serving. So if you find yourself, or you want to be in a position of power what do you want to do with that power? That has to be your focus of attention, not just sit in a position of power and do what, you know. So if you have a powerful vision which is of benefit for all of those people that you are serving as a leader, then you accomplish that vision and everybody benefits. Then you know why you're a leader, because a leader can get things done.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to share anything about ambition?
Well, that's what ambition is, to get things done, not to be something or someone. I'm already something or someone. But if I'm in a position of power, my ambition is not to be in power. My ambition is to use power for a vision, for an ideal, you see. Because if you have power, you can get things done.
I'm very glad you mentioned that I am already something and someone. I've seen this so many times, and you probably have too, where a woman is empty inside, very empty, and then seeks a position of authority to compensate for internal emptiness. You make your life something because internally you feel as if you're nothing. Well, what do you say to that?
That's ego. Ego is a substitute for yourself. And if yourself is empty, you create this mask and say, that's what I am, that's ego. And you could have ambition in that way, which would be not such a good kind of ambition, you know.
Sister Denise, I have seen countless examples of this, and it's actually quite tragic. You've seen this with men, but because this is a program dedicated to women, I'd like to take this up in this context. I've seen women achieve amazing things, really powerful, inspirational women, become something magnificent, and self-taught women. And then they reach the zenith of their professions and shoot themselves in the foot so spectacularly that their fall from grace is nothing but a jaw-dropping experience just to observe. I can imagine how it feels to be like that. What is it that causes something like that to happen, and how does one look for the signs of self-sabotage, and particularly in leadership? Because as the old adage goes, the bigger you are, the harder you do fall.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's because you wanted to be in a position of leadership for its own end, and that the little worm of self-doubt is the thing that turns into the bullet that you shoot into your foot.
How do you recognize the worm, and how do you get rid of the worm? How do you deworm? Don't you love that? How do you deworm? Tell us about deworming.
Well, that's why I'm saying the ambition of a true leader is not to be in a position of leadership. The ambition is to accomplish something for the benefit of the wider public. And then you get on with it, you see. So maybe you reach the pinnacle of a position, but in whose eyes? You see, you may say, okay, I want to be this, and that's the pinnacle. But somebody who wishes to accomplish something for the greater good may consider that as a mere stepping stone, you know, and it may not be. If you just want to be the ruler of the world so that you can be the ruler of the world, that's empty, that's meaningless, that's ego, and it's very damaging because it will make you corrupt. And your corruption is that you destroy everything around you, and that is the tyrant.
Okay, Sister Denise, I think we have to say goodbye to our viewers just now, which is such a pity because this was such a rich talk. I think it's a pity that we can't continue this conversation further, but what I do invite you to do is to perhaps share that which Sister Denise shared in today's talk with your female colleagues, family members, friends, so that you could ask yourselves, what does it mean to be a woman and a leader, and how best can you serve yourself as well as your community? Sister Denise has mentioned about the pitfalls of being a leader for the wrong reasons and how not to sabotage oneself. So a very powerful talk, and I do wish you everything of the best on your own spiritual journey. Thank you so much for joining us, and goodbye.